Hello and welcome to this review of my Pioneer AWX-323. It came with the Pioneer Palcom PX7, which was a type of MSX1, a fairly widespread Japanese home computer system. The MSX wasn't very popular in the US, but it did pretty well in Europe and Asia. The computer was based on a Zilog Z80, which is one of the most famous computer processors ever made, and incidentally it's also the name of a pretty good techno track by Morphology. Anyway, the PX7 could be expanded with a Laserdisc drive and a graphics tablet, and was apparently used a lot for video editing. I got it from the recycling center for £1, and it's in outstanding condition fortunately. Just a few scuff marks on the plastic here and there, some light dust, but nothing significant really. I haven't even bothered to clean it. I don't know when this one was made, but the system was first introduced in 1985, so it's probably pretty old. The keyboard doesn't have feet other than these little pads here, of which there is one missing on this corner. And now that we are at the back, here is the model sticker of the keyboard, which shows the model number AWX-323, but no serial number. And it also says that it was made in Japan, more specifically by Alps Electric, as you can see from the logo on the PCB. It's the old oval logo as well, which, by the way, I think looks way nicer than the modern logo they have. You can also see the keyboard code here on the PCB, by the way, 12KE102A, which suggests that the part number for the switches starts with SKE. You can also see how the PCB is screwed into the case via these metal strips by 6 screws, and the two parts of the case are also screwed into each other with 6 screws, so it's held together pretty well. The case is plastic, fairly thick and really rigid. This thing barely flexes at all. Overall it feels damn sturdy, even though it's pretty light. See, it feels really solid. There's one big skanky fly in the ointment though, and that's the connector, because of course they had to go with one of those weird proprietary ones with lots of weird pins and some impenetrable protocol, I'm sure. A shame really, because I'd have loved to give this a go. The switches are Alps integrated dome switches, most well known for being in the Zenith Supersport laptops. And they're based on rubber domes, yeah, but they're one of the most complicated rubber domes you'll ever see. First of all, the domes don't come in a mat. They're single isolated domes. And second, they form discrete soldered-in switches, so this wasn't made to be cheap. This is a real engineered design here. Here's what it looks like on the inside. Like Alps CM switches, you can take them apart without desoldering, which is nice, but it's not quite as easy because you need to unlatch them from the bottom side rather than straight from the top. Here is the slider, which is Alps mount by the way, and below that is a single dome with a conductive carbon pad at the bottom, which presses down on 2 plates that have the legs that connect to the PCB on them. The slider sits in slits in the corners, so they're very well stabilized. Basically the whole thing is a discrete dome with slider switch. There's an absolutely tiny Alps logo in one of the corners of the top shell here. I hope you can see that on the camera. It's very small, but it's definitely there, and I suspect there's one on the bottom of the housing as well. The thing where it kind of fails is the key feel. It's pretty shit. They're tactile, but it's not that well defined. Some people have reported that these feel linear, which I would say is definitely not the case. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but tactile is maybe being a bit generous too. And despite being a dome with slider design, let alone an integrated one, they still feel very, very mushy. Basically, it feels like a normal rubber dome keyboard, but with less tactility. That's not a great zone to be in, to be honest. Worse, the travel is quite short at just 3mm roughly, as I'm measured with my digital calipers. It's quite short compared to the more traditional 3.5 or 4mm travel. And the tactile bump is right near the bottom, which doesn't help either. You'd expect them to at least be silent, being rubber dome as well as integrated. I mean, that's got to help with sound insulation, right? But no, it's not really silent, and the sound is kind of weird and very plasticky. Here's what it sounds like. For a pretty interesting rubber dome design like this, the performance is worse than disappointing, really. I'd say if you want a nice rubber dome switch, go for BTC or NMB dome with slider, or if you've got the money, Topra. The F keys, of which there are 5, are at the top here, and they use micro switches instead. Pretty stiff ones too, just like the stop button here. One of the more interesting things is the keycaps though. They're genuine Alps-made ABS double shots as given away by the very distinctive injection mold markings. They're pretty thick and Alps mount, and they have some really interesting colors. The alphanumeric caps don't have white lettering, it's a soft grey instead. And the modifiers and some of the special keys are a kind of greyish blue. That reminds me a bit of the slider color of Blue Alps. And the special keys here at the side have green lettering, which is quite lively, but it makes for an elegantly subtle key set actually. And as it seems to have seen very little use, these particular ones have zero shine on them too, which is even nicer. The layout is probably not the easiest to adapt onto other keyboards, so I don't know how well this set would transplant, but really it doesn't even seem from that distant a planet for a specialty keyboard. It has a rather rare combination of an ISO enter and a small backspace, as well as a diamond nav, which is quite old-fashioned, but it's not earth-shatteringly bizarre or anything. It's actually pretty close to an 80s 10-keyless layout when you think of it. Anyway, all in all, I think it's a pretty fun guy, certainly a looker, and the keycaps are great. The only problems are that the switches are kinda crap, and the keyboard is unusable in the first place, that's all. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.